cape.
Here from Corey Bragg. So he says, we had the initial start of Age of Sigmar with the Realm Gate Wars, which had Chaos acting as the main antagonist. Now, with the Necroquake, Nagash, and the Forces of Death are top baddies in the story. Reasonably, Destruction should have its time in the sun as the next realm-crushing threat. But if so, how would you like to see it? Gordrak getting together a massive wah and campaigning across the realms. Bragoth, I'm not sure that, bringing on some new Ice Age that hinders all realms, where you have to fight enemies and elements, or just sneaky goblins playing Puppet Master to cause mayhem. Maybe something else entirely. That is a great question, Corey, and let's kind of back up a little bit here. So the kind of trend that we've seen was that when the game started, it was obviously, just like you said, chaos versus order, and it was all about chaos trying to consume the realms, and then it moves now to where we are currently with Nagash trying to control the realms. And now what I want the Destruction campaign to be is very different, because they are a lack of control and the fighting in opposition of the consumption of chaos. They are something wholly unique. And here's the thing, each of those campaigns that we've seen has dovetailed super nicely into the next one. So whereas we start off with chaos, well, Nagash's whole point is, I can fight the chaos gods, I can win this, but I need control. And so he asserts control to be able to fight the last threat, thereby becoming the threat himself. And so what I want for the next one is for that same kind of dovetailing thing to happen, where Nagash establishes control, but the natural response of the realms is to say, no more control. In that way, we can have the forces of destruction rise up and rebel. And I think that's exactly the kind of stage that they would excel at. If you haven't seen my video talking about what it's like to be in Gur, which I think really exemplifies what a lot of destruction armies are trying to represent, is this idea of like a true lawlessness, but also just true freedom, where everyone has to fight for what they have. You're basically in a giant food chain. And so the fact that you're alive is proof that you are strong and powerful and deserve to be alive. And it's that kind of disruption of natural order, but with kind of a very natural sense of almost chaos, if you will. Not chaos capital C as in the warping powers or like that, but I mean anarchy. I mean insanity, where everyone is fighting for themselves and it's survival of the fittest, that kind of stuff. I think that that is a direct response to Nagash asserting control. Now you gotta remember, when we talk about these kind of grand narratives, right? Chaos, and now death is the enemy, and then at some point we hope that destruction will be the enemy. We don't just think about the models and units that we get from those enemies, right? We don't just think about Nighthaunt. We also have to think about, lore-wise, is how the theme of that campaign season affects the existing factions. For example, in the beginning, Stormcast are very black and white. We hate chaos. Okay, we get it. You hate chaos. It's all good. But when we moved into Soul Wars, something unique happened where we have to explore what Stormcasts are like in relation to death. And they have a very unique relationship to death. One that no other faction has because of their deathless nature, but not being undead. And so what I'm saying is the theme is death, but the way that the factions interpret that, react to that, are mindful of it, is very, very different. And so I want to see the same thing carry into destruction. Let me give you an example. Let's say the theme was destruction stuff. I would think in that, if that's the main theme that they want to hammer home with Age of Sigmar for that year, think of things that work well as counter themes and also complementary ones when it comes to destruction. For example, if everything you're talking about in your lore is about savagery and wildness and lawlessness and freedom, having an army release of, say, free people, again I have no information about this, but the order and regimentedness of free people is a contrast to your main theme, making it very interesting. Likewise, other factions like, say, Skaven kind of fit into that because, yes, the grand overarching narrative and tone of the game right now is crazy insanity, but Skaven are a very unique take on that kind of theme. So I don't just want to talk about what happens next in the story, but I want to talk about the factions they can develop as they dive into those concepts. As far as some other details, like I want Gordrak to stay relevant and stay important. They asserted him as kind of being this herald of the Grand Wall, that he's going to lead the kind of end times, or at least usher in the time of destruction. I want that to be the case. One, because it's a promise they made to Ironjaw's players. That's what he does on his page. But also because I think he is the kind of leader that the faction needs. Now, I don't think that it kind of inhibits them from making bigger and better models. It can be bigger models than Gorjak, I don't care. But I think he needs to be fleshed out with the power and charisma to be the character to lead that, to make good on their promise of what they describe him as in the Iron Jaws book. Now, as far as some other Age of Sigmar lore odds and ends I'd like to see, what I'd like to really do is when we looked at Soul War starting, we got to the part with the Necroquake, but then honestly, in terms of linear story advancement, everything kind of paused, because Beast of Chaos came out, but it didn't push anything forward. And so what I'd like to see is, one, are there more effects? Like, if someone was to say to me, how is Slaanesh going to get free? I would say the Necroquake can easily break the shackles that chained him, or at least crack some things that he can seep out. That could definitely be an effect, and I think it would be a great ramification. We saw that when the wave of Necro energy, whatever, in the book Soul Wars by Josh Reynolds, when it hit Azir, particularly where they make and reforge Stormcast, it obliterated it. Like, it just tore it all down. Why can't it have that same effect upon freeing Slaanesh when it reaches his shackles? Or at least weakening them so he can pull and break them apart. I think that would be a really great way to release him, especially because then you have the irony of Nagash trying to assert control and unleashing a new level of insanity, which I think would be a lot of fun. Again, talking about contrasts and things like that with themes. So I think Slaanesh is going to come back and make a big impact on the mortal realms, and she should, I think. In addition to that, as far as where other factions go, I still stand by my statement that I think free people are the most necessary faction in the game. And by that I mean it's because we can relate to them. They keep pumping out books about Stormcast, which are awesome, and some of those books are incredibly well written. The truth of the matter is I don't relate to a demigod made of lightning who never dies. I relate to the dude who dies in droves in these stories. And so give me some of those heroes. Give me some of those characters to bind to, and cities to be explored and things like that. And so the reason I bring up free people is because when you have Slaanesh cults ascending, and you have Nagash's death control all over the place, and you got destruction rampaging outside, it's how those things affect the common man that you and I can relate to. And so whether that's insidious, like pleasure cults of Slaanesh, or in the book Soul Wars, there's minor cults dedicated to Nagash, but they see him as a protector and a guider, not so much a dark evil god who's super self-absorbed. And so it's the way that you and I interpret different things that we can relate to. We can see why somebody would believe this, how they'd be deceived, all that kind of stuff. It's very relatable is the key word there. And so I think developing free people as a faction in the story, but then eventually, of course, as a model line, is going to be the absolute key to getting the lore, I think, where it needs to be. I know everybody wants Skaven, and I'm very excited for Skaven players to one day get their book. I think that I want the setting to be a little bit even more established with free peoples first, because then they'll make the burrowing technology of like the rat holes, whatever, to go through different realms, all the more important when Skaven finally do come. Because what I don't want is a faction that's crazy and all over the place and hard to understand in a world, in a setting that is the same way, because then you just don't get it. But if you have a very well established what cities are like, what people are like in this realm, how we relate to them, and then you add something that's truly different, then there's that contrast, like I say. Again, it's kind of the theme of the episode, I guess, makes a far bigger impact. And I think it'll come, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm interested to see if they kind of stick with the same release patterns they did with Soul Wars, which is a cool set of models, not necessarily a full mega box set like they did for Soul Wars. That probably took a lot of time and energy to make that set. But I mean, even if it was just they did Legions of Nagash and then they released Nighthaunt as a range, right? Legions of Nagash is an update of existing stuff they did a very good job on, and then Nighthaunt is its own beautiful model collection. If they did the same kind of thing for Destruction, where it's like, hey, here's a night goblin army, but has an amalgamation of all this kind of stuff, kind of like Legion of Nagash does, where it kind of brings a lot of things together. Do that, and then maybe have a new line of models. Truth of the matter is, a lot of the Destruction models are pretty fantastic. They just need rules, because that's the one thing they've been neglecting for so long. So I do think they need rules updates before they need new models, but new models are never something I'm going to argue with, so hey, it's what it is. But I can tell you that the fan base is going to go absolutely insane when MoonClan Grots finally get their book. And then after that, I don't know. I guess kind of the base, whatever they're called, Iron Guts, whatever the base ogre is, I think also deserves a lot of special treatment because there's a lot of cool kit bashing potential in that army range. So Corey, to really kind of surmise and very quickly put together an answer for your question, how would I bring about the destruction stuff? I would end the Soul Wars season with Nagash kind of asserting real control, whether it's one more blow back to Sigmar to kind of push him out of power, and even pushing back the Chaos Gods, but having it end on a note where it seems like Nagash is truly like one step away from being in control, and then having some huge pushback on a realm-wide level by the forces of destruction being like, no, we will not be unchained or not be chained down. We're going to fight back. Eventually, I want to see Gorka Morka, not as a model necessarily. I don't think you can capture Gorka Morka as a model, but I want to see it's a character in the series. You know, at least Black Library books where the gods talk amongst each other. Have him there be there. So I want the universal in all 8 realms simultaneously. Forces of destruction go nope and push back the forces of death and assert themselves, kind of fill that power vacuum with Gordrak particularly at the lead. Now as far as where do I want his efforts to be fought, of course fighting undead stuff is probably a pretty obvious, you know, whiplash, pushback to Nagash, but also I want him to be fighting and leading campaigns against everything, which is kind of hard to do if he's a singular person. Maybe have Gordrak specifically fight Nagash. Everyone else is about pushing whatever's near them, so order forces, chaos forces, whatever. And then as it's going on, we all realize that the effects of the Necroquake were so great that Slaanesh reappears. As Slaanesh reappears, a new threat enters the arena, and everyone has to brace for impact. So yeah, I think when you combine those ideas with the idea of defining better free peoples and what it's like to be in that realm, and how they see things and interpret things, it's a great combination. So awesome question, Corey. Thank you so much for writing in. Line up your fantasy armies in battle in the land of the dead, or on an alien planetoid for your sci-fi games. Either way, the Deadlands gaming mat from 2+ Stuff is just the thing to bring your battlefields to life. Don't let your painted models go to waste by playing on felt or damage them with a rough textured board. The Deadlands gaming mat provides a beautiful theater of war for your models while being made of a thick, soft neoprene to protect them from damage. Rolled up nicely in its free carrying case that you get, you'll be ready to bring the drama of war wherever you go. Head over to 2plustuff.com or in the link down below for more details. The Deadlands gaming mat. Bring your games to life. Currently only available in the US, but coming overseas very shortly. Hey Wargamers, thank you so much for watching that video. Be sure to hit subscribe and click the little bell notification icon so you're alerted to all new videos coming out.